Okay, this is Target 2C Sketching Polynomials retake video. Let me just grab this color yellow up here, and I'm going to write some rules up here to remind us. So remember, if the degree or the power, if the power on a factor is odd, so if you have an odd power, it's a punch. And if you have an even power, it's a bounce. And then if the whole degree is even and the leading coefficient is positive, so even positive, the end behavior looks like this. If it's even negative, then the end behavior looks like this. And odd positive looks like this. And I guess I'll write it over here, odd negative looks like that. So we're going to use that to graph this polynomial. So let me get a better color. So let's look at this. First of all, it wants the x-intercept. So the x-intercept that goes with this is 3, and then -2, and 7. And again, these exponents are invisible right here, but those are invisible ones. So I know that this is a degree 3 because 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. So I know it's an odd. So now I have to decide if it's odd positive or odd negative. So I look at this, and the leading coefficient is negative, so this is an odd negative. So odd negative end behavior looks like this. Okay, now these, let's look at each of these to decide if they're bounces or punches. So the power on this factor is 1, that's odd, so it is a punch. And the power on x plus 2 is 1, and that's odd, so it's a punch. And the power on x minus 7 is also 1, and that's odd, so it's a punch. So that means it punches through instead of bounces back. Okay, now I have to find the y-intercept. To find the y-intercept, I'm going to let x equal 0 and find y. So I have y equals -1/6, and then 0 minus 3, and 0 plus 2, and 0 minus 7. And I get -1/6, 0 minus 3 is -3, 0 plus 2 is 2, and 0 minus 7 is -7. So it looks like I get a -1 times the -3 is a +3, times 2 is 6, times -7 is -42. So I get -42 over 6, which is -7. So my y-intercept is 0, -7. Also, these x-intercepts, I'm okay with just 3, -2, and 7, but technically they are 3, 0, -2, 0, and 7, 0 for my x-intercepts. Now I just have to graph it. So I'm going to start by plotting my x-intercepts. So my x-intercepts, and I'll do this in red, my x-intercepts are 3, -2, and 7. Okay, and I know my end behavior. My end behavior is going to look like this. So at the end, this is going to be doing something like this, and this is going to be doing something like that. Something like that's going to be happening at the end. Okay, now -2, so here's -2 right there, and that's a punch. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to punch through it. I'm going to go all the way down through my y-intercept, which is -7. So I'm going to come down here, go back up and touch my next intercept, which is 3. So I look at 3, and 3 is a punch. So I'm going to punch up, but what goes up has to come back down. It's going to come down like that and go through there, and we're done. So this is the graph of this polynomial. Okay, let's look at problem number 2. All right, so first let's find the degree. So I'm going to look at the power on that. That's a 2. The power on this is a 3. The power on this is invisible and it's a 1. And the power on this is a 2. So 2 plus 3 is 6, plus 1 is, 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 1 is 6, plus 2 is 8. So my degree is 8. And my leading coefficient is positive, so this is an even positive. So my end behavior looks something like this at the end. Okay, now my zeros, or my x-intercepts, are positive 3, 0, negative 4, 0, negative 2, 0, and positive 1, 0. Now I have to find my y-intercept, and to find my y-intercept, I need to let my x's equal 0, or sorry, my x's equal 0 and find y. So I get y equals 1/18, and then 0 minus 3 is negative 3, but I have to square it. Then 0 plus 4 is 4, but I have to cube it. And 0 plus 2 is 2, and I have to raise that to the first. And then finally 0 minus 1 is negative 1, and that I have to square. So it looks like I get 1 times 9 times 4 to the third is 64, and 2 and 1 all over 18. Now I could do 9 times 64, I don't know what that is, and multiply by 2, but I can also cross cancel. I notice that 9 times 2 gives me 18, so the 18 in the numerator is going to cancel with the 18 in the denominator, so I get my y-intercept is 0, 64, because 1 times 64 times 1 is 64. So now I have to graph my polynomial. So I'm going to plot my zeros. So remember my zeros were 3, negative 4, negative 2, and positive 1. And I know at the end this is happening, and that's happening. Something like that's happening at the ends. Okay, so this is 4, negative 4. So if you notice, negative 4 is, we didn't discuss this, but this is the third power. So third power is odd, and odds are punches. So I'm going to punch through. So I'm going to go down, but then I have to pop back up to hit that 0, right? That 0 is negative 2, and that came from that, and that's also odd, so that's a punch. But I have to actually go through my y-intercept up here. My y-intercept is 64, so I have to go through, and then I have to pop back up and go through 64, and then get back down to 1. So now I'm going to look at 1, and that's even, so this is a bounce. So instead of punching through, it's going to bounce back up. And then it's going to come down, and it's going to hit 3. And if I look at 3, that's also even, so that's a bounce. So it bounces back up. So that is my polynomial. So here are ones for you. Remember, you have to show this to me or to your math lab teacher. So here's number 1 and number 2. Good luck.